Hello, I am Nathan Jenigas, and I lead strategy and product management for the cybersecurity business at BlackBerry. Today, we are talking to Jonathan Whaling, a seasoned market professional with Forrester. He will discuss and do a deep dive into the new Forrester Total Economic Report for CylancePROTECT. Jonathan, let's kick this off.
Well, thanks, Nathan. I'm Jonathan Whaling with Forrester's TEI consulting practice. We help vendors demonstrate and organizations understand the value of technology solutions. I led this TEI study, which was commissioned by BlackBerry to evaluate the benefits and costs of BlackBerry's CylancePROTECT solution. Today, I'm going to share results from the TEI that I hope can provide some real-world examples to connect the benefits around CylancePROTECT and how you might apply those benefits for your organizations. Our agenda will include a quick overview of what a TEI is, and then some high-level study results. Then I will dig into the customer journey with some background on the organization's needs for endpoint protection solutions, and I will go through each of the financial benefits in some detail in the model and summarize the cost before wrapping up with a little bit of Q&A. I wanted to start with an impactful perspective that captures two of the main benefits of CylancePROTECT: its ability to prevent nearly all threats and reduce IT mitigation of incidents. This is a representative quote, but it was true for all organizations in our study. Well, what is a TEI? TEI stands for Total Economic Impact. It's a Forrester proprietary methodology, which has been in existence for over 20 years. We've had it in use and we refined it over that time. It's used by many vendors in the technology world. The TEI extends beyond other business value models like TCO or ROI, so that Forrester evaluates financial costs and benefits and risk adjusts every metric to provide a more conservative approach. We also explore strategic impacts of solutions such as flexibility for future initiatives and relevant risks of the various use cases. There are 5 phases to a methodology. In this project, we started by reviewing documentation and speaking with internal stakeholders at BlackBerry. This followed with a key phase of interviewing customers anonymously at organizations just like yours to understand their security challenges and the benefits realized from CylancePROTECT. We then built a composite organization based upon the inputs from all of the organizations in the study. This ensures both anonymity and provides simplicity for the model. All the benefits and costs are there then tagged and based upon this composite organization's size. And I'll describe that in a minute. But first, I need to go through the requisite disclosures. The main points that I want to raise here on this slide is that this is a brief overview of the full report, which was commissioned by BlackBerry and will soon be available on their website. Rather than taking these numbers at face value, we at Forrester encourage you to use your own data in the context of this model to estimate your return on investment. And as a matter of protocol, Forrester does not endorse any clients through any sort of TEI study. What were the results? Well, I always like to start with sort of the end in mind here. Here's a quick peek at the end results of the study, and we'll again explain to you how we got to these numbers. These top-level results were based upon a composite organization of $3 billion in revenue and 10,000 employees. The total risk-adjusted present value of benefits over a 3-year period was just under $2.5 million. The cost associated with those benefits was about a little bit under $1.3 million, for a net present value of $1.24 million and a payback of under 6 months. The ROI came in this study at exactly 100%. For this particular study, Forrester interviewed 4 organizations across 3 industry verticals. 2 of these were in Europe, and 2 of these were based in North America. The installations ranged from 300 to 30,000 devices, so quite a wide range. They included servers, standalone manufacturing control systems, laptops, and tablets. Prior to using CylancePROTECT, all the organizations were using some form of legacy endpoint protection solution from different leading vendors in the market. Let's look at some of the challenges that these organizations faced prior to choosing a new endpoint protection solution. Well, the biggest challenge, which was impacted by 2 of the organizations in the study, was they had suffered significant breaches that their previous endpoint solutions failed to detect. While none of these breaches resulted in any large negative publicity, they did incur unplanned expenses associated with things like investigation, recovery, prevention of future breaches, And in cases where there was data on customers or employees that was exposed outside the organization, there were also external costs involved for regulatory agencies that got involved, rework, as well as other third parties that were involved in sort of recovery efforts. Secondly, all the organizations wanted to avoid costs associated with traditional signature-based antivirus solutions. Things such as reviewing identified threats in the market and frequently updating virus signatures. Third, one of the largest organizations in the study had a myriad of decentralized IT departments, many of which were managing completely different solutions. This prevented corporate oversight and limited sharing of incident data across the enterprise. Finally, all these organizations in the study were unable to protect all the assets with a single solution due to a variety of devices that they had in place and equipment. Some of these were in standalone or closed network environments. Compounding this was the need during the pandemic to enable employees to work from home, many of whom chose to work on their own personal devices. Now, you may relate to some of these organizations, some of these challenges here on the slide, or you may have some other issues that may come to mind for your own organization. So what was the composite? The composite organization, again, is a representative, fictitious company that falls somewhere in the range of the companies that we evaluated in the study. For this study, we landed on a composite of a manufacturing company with $3 billion in revenue, annual revenue, 10,000 employees, and a 1-to-1 employee-to-device ratio. And as mentioned, there were more than one legacy endpoint monitoring solutions in place at this company. What were the requirements that they looked at when they were evaluating a new solution? These were the key ones that I've listed on the slide here. Replacing a traditional signature-based method with some AI capabilities, offering an easy implementation path and less expensive and less timely ongoing management for their security professionals, offering compatibility with multiple devices and operating systems, monitoring and protecting personal devices and USB drives, and obtaining support from a vendor for incident response. And this quote here on the next slide speaks to some of these requirements that were captured by one of the organizations in the study. Now I want to kind of take you through the benefits, the model part of the TEI here, and explain a little bit about what's behind the numbers. Here are the benefit categories that the BlackBerry customers identified as most important to them. These are the reduced cost of a security breach, which was the largest one at over 1.3 million. The decommissioning of any legacy software subscription costs that they would have had in place, that came to about 806,000. Time savings from incident recovery and mitigation, that was about 227,000. And the smallest one was time savings from the elimination of antivirus updates, which was estimated at 167,000. The total of these makes up the $2.5 million in present value benefit over the 3-year period in the study. Let's look at each of these in a little bit more detail here so I can explain what's behind some of these numbers. So the basis for the first benefit is that none of the organizations in the study incurred any breaches whatsoever since the installation of CylancePROTECT. That's important because several of them had incurred some breaches, some of them multiple breaches, prior to this installation. So this benefit can be tricky to model because costs and impact of a breach do vary widely across companies. So we made some assumptions from Forrester's Cost of a Cybersecurity Breach survey from the fourth quarter of 2020. This survey is updated every couple of years, and it's based upon a survey of 350 cybersecurity leaders at global organizations from several countries around the world. The purpose of the survey is to evaluate leaders' cybersecurity strategies and what happened with breaches at their companies, all in sort of an anonymous fashion, if you will. So data from this survey in particular was used to identify the average number of breaches at 2.8, the average cost of a breach, which was a little over $600,000, and the impact on the employees. For an organization of 10,000, that was about a 2/3 impact. 2/3 of the employees were impacted by this fictitious breach. Then we applied a conservative improvement in endpoint security efficacy of about 5% from CylancePROTECT to come up with a benefit of 1.3 million over this 3-year period. And this one quote here on the screen here is from one of the companies that had probably the most significant breach in the study, a probe that lasted multiple months involving dozens of internal staff, as well as some outside regulatory agencies. So the cost can easily go into the hundreds of thousands of dollars when something like that occurs. The second benefit is something that we put in most all of our TEI studies, and that's the removal of existing software in the case of a replacement, which was typically the case in these organizations. So each of the organizations, again, had various types of legacy antivirus solutions in place. Those were obviously removed when CylancePROTECT was installed, and there was a savings of subscription costs going forward. Now, because these savings, again, could vary widely across the study and type of solution being used, we used a published per device fee of $36 for a widely used solution to come up with a total savings of about $806,000 over this 3-year period. Now, of course, this savings is going to be offset by the license fee of CylancePROTECT, which I'll get to a little bit later. One of the more important benefits to the organizations in the study was time savings from mitigation and recovery of incidents. This is due to the elimination of activities that I had mentioned earlier, things like investigating potential threats, recovering infected devices, and in some cases, having to re-image devices and getting end users up and running again. This particular benefit is based upon actual data that we collected in the study from all 4 organizations, and it amounts to $227,000 over the 3-year period. After implementing CylancePROTECT, these resources, which in most cases were time resources affiliated with IT or cybersecurity staff, can be refocused, if you will, on more prevention type of activities rather than recovery or reaction activities. And this quote was from one of the organizations in the study. They talked about how easy it was to sort of maintain and identify threats using CylancePROTECT with the so-called community score in the software. So within a matter of minutes, with your threats that are coming in, whether this is going to be something that needs to be quarantined or not. Now, the last benefit was the smallest one, and that's time savings from eliminating antivirus updates. Now, I do realize that some of these updates do run in the background, but in some cases they don't. And in some cases, there are end user support issues involved in trying to get an antivirus update through. So for this particular benefit, we assumed a very conservative estimate of about 10 to 12 minutes per device per end user, and updates would occur, let's say, 4 times per year. And then on the IT side, there was about 8 hours of time devoted to this update, again, 4 times a year. And again, this was from actual data within the study. And this accumulates to, we arrived at a total of $167,000 here over the 3-year period. Now, beyond these benefits in the model, which we were able to attach cost numbers to, financial numbers to, there were other things that the customers told us in the study that they could not identify financial costs to. So we call these unquantified benefits. And there are 4 of them that really kind of bubble to the surface here. The first one has to do with a companion product called CylanceOPTICS. This was not a specific focus of the study that we undertook, but the organizations that did have the companion product said that this was instrumental in helping them recover and support incident response from any potential threats through the features like automatic scripts and other things like that. The second one, which was also a requirement that I mentioned earlier, was providing support for multiple device types and operating systems. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this enables organizations to sort of simplify their security environments by eliminating different overlapping tools that almost all of them had in place originally. And then furthermore, it's sort of a future benefit in terms of anything more that you might add down the road in terms of new operating systems or new devices that can be also covered by CylancePROTECT or supported by CylancePROTECT. The third benefit was an interesting one. One of the organizations in our study did periodic employee satisfaction studies, and included in that were questions around cybersecurity. They found that after implementing CylancePROTECT alongside a training program that supported it, this survey showed a ratings on cybersecurity increasing by 25 percentage points. So the net of this was that employees in this organization felt more assured that their devices were going to be protected and secure as they went about their daily operations. And lastly, the professionals that we spoke to in the interviews all gave CylancePROTECT very high compliments and very high marks for peace of mind. Kind of an unquantifiable metric, if you will, but because these professionals tend to be more cautious and more wary, I thought it was very interesting that they all felt that they could sleep better at night, knowing that CylancePROTECT was protecting all of their endpoints, and there would be minimal risk to reputational damage from loss associated with the loss of customer or organizational data. This is a quote from one of the customers that speaks about their use of Cylance Optics and how they view that really as an integral part of their overall EDR solution. So on the cost side, I won't go through all the numbers here because they were fairly simple to model. In order for us to calculate a true ROI or NPV, we do need to take into account what the cost of a new technology solution would be. So for this composite organization, the largest cost component is going to be the licensing fees of the product. And for an organization with 10,000 devices, this comes to just a little over $1 million over the 3-year period, again, present value adjusted. This fee was provided by BlackBerry and is also subject to volume pricing, which means that if your organization is larger than this, you would pay a smaller per device fee for something over 10,000 devices. The other two slices of the pie have to do with implementation and administration of the solution. These two pieces total about $212,000 together over 3 years. And just the important thing here is the relative nature of these costs compared to the license fee. They're very, very small. So there's typically only a handful of resources were involved in the implementation, and even less than one resource is involved in sort of maintaining and administering the solution on an annual or go-forward basis. So that was a key benefit to all the organizations in this study. So here again are sort of the summary numbers from the study. The net present value, which is really just the benefits less the costs over the 3-year period, is about 1.24 million. This represents an exact 100% ROI number over the 3-year period. And as you can see here with kind of the green line, the payback comes right between your initial period and year 1. So about a little less than 6 months payback on this particular solution. And I want to show just sort of one last customer quote here, which I like to do, which has a sort of a nice wrapper, I think, for the overall benefits and opinions on CylancePROTECT. This consultant saying that circling in the peace of mind benefit again on how much it activates its protection and machines are safe in the case of any potential threats. So that concludes the presentation part of my portion. I'm going to throw it on back to Nathan now for any particular questions you might have.
Hey, thank you, Jonathan, and thank you for that wonderful information. And I think what at the start you mentioned that this is an example report. So if I was wanting to get started here, like what are sort of the 3 steps you'd recommend if I want to try to do this myself?
Well, the first thing, that's a great question, which many people tend to ask. The first thing is to go get the report, which will be available soon. And within that report, there are detailed models or tables, if you will, on each of these benefits and each of these costs. Within that, you'll see exact estimates and assumptions that we took in the model, and things like salaries of employees, number of devices, time involved in investigation and recovery, those types of things. And so those things can easily be substituted out for actual data that you as an organization can have for your security teams, your IT teams, number of employees, number of devices, et cetera. So it's really just a matter of plug and play. Just kind of put in the actual numbers that your organization has using the model that we have, setting up a spreadsheet, something along those lines, and then just going forward with calculating what the actual benefits and costs would be for your organization. The cost side obviously would be contingent upon any costs that BlackBerry might provide to customers for a specific installation.
Excellent. Another question was maybe give a little bit more detail on what was the interview process like. Is this you just asked a few questions, or did you gather some significant data as well during that?
Yes, it's quite detailed. We do start, of course, with nominations from BlackBerry in terms of who we should interview, and so they make the introduction for us. And at that point, the client, BlackBerry in this case, kind of steps out of the picture, and then we dialogue directly with the customers. So we retain that buffer, that level of anonymity between the vendor and the customer. We have developed a very rigorous interview guide that covers all of these different benefits, costs, and leaves room for identifying other things we didn't think of. We set up a scheduled time with the customer. We usually try to speak to somebody who was involved in the decision process for the solution and the implementation of that solution. We spend about an hour to an hour and a half on the phone with them. We occasionally have follow-up questions that we do by email. So it's fairly involved. In almost all the cases, the customers are very willing to share information with us, and then a lot of that makes it into the report and the model. But again, there's this level of anonymity preserved here, so the customers' names or organization names are not revealed through the study.
Yeah, and another question here on it says the 3-year risk adjusted cost. So why 3 years? And so what are sort of some of the top risks that are adjusted for in there?
Yeah, so the 3 years has kind of been a way we've done it for quite a long time, and I think the main reason for that is that technology changes so fast, so darn fast in the market. So even within 3 years, sometimes whatever solution you have might be outdated or have new competition in a market for sure. But any investment in technology has inherent risks associated with it. So this can include implementation risk, usage risk, benefits risks, those types of things. So not only do we encourage people to put their own data in here, but we risk adjust each of these benefits and costs. Benefits are usually adjusted down and costs are adjusted up to provide just a super conservative estimate on the overall on the end results, if you will. We use factors of anywhere from 5 to 10, 15, sometimes 20% to adjust those risks. And a lot of that is based upon how consistent are the results here across the customers. If they're consistent, we will apply a lower risk factor. If it's not consistent, we're going to provide a higher risk factor. And if we have actual numbers for costs or for benefits, we'll again lower that risk down. But if we're less certain about it, because there's just variability in the implementation, for example, then we'll apply a higher factor.
Excellent. And one final question is, a lot of times, you see it. I'm trying to convince my leadership, my VP, my CISO, my CIO, like, hey, I got the right idea here. But they want to go, no, we're just using XYZ, or we're using the cheapest license cost.
Right.
Sort of what is the biggest value piece out of that I could bring to that table, and how do I communicate that message?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is that cost, reducing the cost of a potential breach. And in all cases where there were breaches uncovered in our study, they all felt they had a secure solution in place already, which turned out not to be the case. So, I mean, there really is no actual price you can place on a breach with a potential lack of trust and loss of data in the market among your customers. And that could just be astronomical. So that's probably the biggest number one factor, I think, to go in and to try to convince management with. I mean, I think the other reason is one of the things that Patty had mentioned earlier is in his talk, is that there's just such a trend towards time constraints of your IT staff and the trend towards mobility and remote work arrangements. It's harder and harder to protect devices that are used in a mobile environment or are used maybe in a remote working arrangement or a home arrangement. And that just seems to be the way that the working world is going nowadays. So it's more important, I think, to have a solution like CylancePROTECT, which can protect all these different types of devices, without any sorts of signature-based or antivirus type updates on them.
Excellent. Thank you, Jonathan, for taking us through this today.
I enjoyed it.
I greatly appreciate the time and the collaboration you and the rest of the Forrester team put together on this report and webinar. And thank everyone else for joining today to really understand better how to evaluate the economics, the total economic impact of your endpoint security decisions, and how CylancePROTECT delivers the outcome for our customers today. Thanks again.